Today on Better Book Clubs, the dirty little secrets of English teachers. Today I want to tell you one of the dirty little secrets that most English teachers share. But first I want to talk about why I became an English teacher. I did it because I loved to read, and I wanted to be able to share my love of reading with my students. But the problem with being an English teacher is that you just keep reading the same books over and over and over again. The Red Badge of Courage, 4 or 5 times. Cannery Row, 4 or 5 times. The Scarlet Letter, 6 or 7 times. The Great Gatsby, 7 or 8 times. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, 8, 9, 10 times, I don't know. Now, it's true that there's an upside to this because good books do become better every time you read them. So there are several books I can think of that I really enjoyed teaching because every time I read them, something new opened up for me. A few that come right to mind: Haroun and the Sea of Stories by Salman Rushdie, Walden by Henry David Thoreau, Hemingway's short stories. So these were really wonderful pieces to teach over and over because I wouldn't normally have read them more than once or maybe twice as an ordinary reader, and being a teacher gave me the opportunity to read them over and over and grow to appreciate them more and more. Now granted, I didn't have to literally reread from page 1 to the end all of these novels that many times. After you've read them 2 or 3 times, you kind of know what you're doing, and then I would go back in and refresh my memory about some things and focus in on some particular passages that I wanted to work on with my students. But the dirty little secret of most English teachers is that that's all we have time to read. The same dozen books over and over and over again. Now, you might say, well, you just said you're not rereading all of those books after you've taught them a few times. But what you are reading is student papers. Lots of them. You can do the math. If a teacher does what's known as a 5-by-5 schedule, that is teaching 5 classes, 5 days a week, and each of those classes has 30 students in it, and each student writes 3 3-page papers in a semester. That's 1,300 pages of reading. That's a lot of pages to be reading, and that's what most English teachers are reading instead of reading what's new. Now, I don't mean to get up on a soapbox here, but wouldn't it be great if we made it possible for our public high school English teachers to be reading the new Pulitzer Prize finalists and the hot new poets and the literary books that show up on the bestseller list? Since I moved into the college classroom about 20 years ago, I've been reading at the rate of about 30 books a year, but even that isn't nearly enough to be able to keep up. This helps to explain why the literary canon on the high school reading lists tends to be lagging behind the rest of society, sometimes by decades. So take, for example, Catcher in the Rye. 6 times, 7 times. Back when I was teaching public high school, Catcher in the Rye was on the reading list, and I know it's still on some reading lists today. But the problem even back then was that my students, most of them, found Holden Caulfield insufferable as a protagonist. And part of the problem was that he was actually the age of their grandparents. There was a conversation about 10 years ago about replacing Catcher in the Rye with David Mitchell's novel Black Swan Green. I love this novel too. It's actually more like a collection of short stories, and it's true that it has, in some ways, a similar protagonist to Catcher in the Rye, and it's a well-written book. It's newer in the sense that it was published in 2006, but the fact is that even this protagonist was the age of my students' parents, not a member of their generation. There are high schools where the reading list has been updated and they have teachers who are reading currently, but in a lot of cases the curriculum just lags behind because teachers just don't have time to read and keep current and bring new things into the high school curriculum. This shouldn't be a dirty little secret, of course. We should be acknowledging how hard we ask our English teachers to work, and better yet, giving them some room in their schedules in order to read up and stay current and bring new things into the curriculum for their students to enjoy and relate to and appreciate as good literature. I challenge you to go back and find one of your English teachers today and thank them for all the reading they did to help move you and your education forward. And I would love to hear some of your ideas about how some of these classic texts that show up in the high school canon could be switched out for newer works of equal quality that might speak more to some of our high school students today. I hope to see you in the comments below. If you like what you see, please subscribe, and I'll be back soon with another episode of Better Book Clubs.